Frank Stanisci of NLL Lacrosse Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish Sports World Network, or Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Joining me now is the star of the show, Gary Groob, and of course, the star of lacrosse, Jim Veltman, former player for the Buffalo and Toronto lacrosse teams in the NLL. Welcome to the program, guys.
Well, thanks, Frank. Welcome, Jim. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thanks, gentlemen. I think the only team you forgot was the Ontario Raiders. Actually, I played for 1 year.
Oh, okay, that's right. Yeah, that was the name, though, right? Of the same. Never mind. I apologize to the Ontario Raiders.
We also go with the Brampton Excelsiors and the Coquitlam Adenacks.
Oh, here we go. Okay, all right. Well, those we can talk about now or during the program. Jim, we like to ask everybody involved in lacrosse what brought them to the game, what made them start lacrosse, and why they enjoy it so much.
Well, the start for me happened because I was a Brampton kid, to be honest. My parents were Dutch immigrants. They didn't really know a lot about the game itself. I wouldn't say I learned from my dad or anything like that. My older brother played, I believe, but I started quite young at about 5 years old. What was typical for a Brampton kid was that you played hockey in the winter, lacrosse in the summer. And that's what I did. But I also joined soccer because my dad was Dutch. He played some semi-pro in Holland, and he wanted me to play soccer as well. So I was a dual summer sport kid, if you will. I was playing soccer and lacrosse at the same time. After 3 years of that, I was on the representative teams in both sports, and my dad just shook his head and said, "You gotta pick one. We can't keep this up. The travel's just too much. The conflicts are too much." And in the end, I think I probably disappointed him when I said, "I want to play lacrosse."
The game itself, what did it do for you? What about the game, you think hooked you?
You know what? Just the speed of the game. I was a very active kid. I wasn't a kid that sat around. As you know, there weren't video games back then, at least not the kind that kids play now. And I just needed to do something. I think my parents knew that as well. And I grew up in a family of 3 brothers and a sister. So I had 2 older brothers that I looked up to and always wanted to model myself after. I wanted to play in their games. I just couldn't get enough of it. So the game was just something that I took to, really. I wasn't so successful my first year. I think I might have scored, 1 goal. I remember being in Tyke, it's a 7-8 age group. I was a 6-year-old on the 7 and 8 team, and I think I scored 1 goal. I can remember being on the bench. I couldn't see over the bench. And the coach used to pick me up, put me right beside him where he was standing so I could actually watch the game. And he would put me on just in key moments where, the game was out of hand or whatever. And I can remember my first goal. I was just so happy. And after that, the goals came more and more. I mean, I know in the NLL I was considered a defender, but to be honest, I was more of an offensive player growing up.
Hey, Gary, can you believe it? I mean, seriously, can you believe we actually have Jim Veltman on the show? The guy we used to yell at from the stands, the guy that used to lead the Toronto Rock in some championships.
I'll go.
I just can't believe we have him on the show, to be honest with you.
I used to watch him in Brampton. I used to watch him in Buffalo. I'll go that much further. I didn't know that the Dutch thing, because my parents are Dutch immigrants as well. A little bit more in common. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about your parents, but my parents came, on the boat. They weren't a couple then. My dad came with his family. My mom came on her own. And they met here. I guess my dad impressed my mom enough, and the rest is history.
I have, my uncle married a Dutch woman, and so he had 4 sons, and soccer was very important to them. So I can relate to what you're talking about and the love of the game. He played semi-pro. My uncle did, the Italian half of their family. And so I understand about the ethnic draw to sports. Now, having said that, it doesn't sound like you got much pushback from your father in regards to picking soccer, but was more important to him that you had a more of a, let's just say, a manageable life, and he wanted to be a part of it, him and his wife, your mother, and they realized it was just a little too difficult to be stuck in between making tough choices. So my question is, today, some of the challenges to start the game, most of them have to do with the fact that we do have a lot of immigrants coming in. We do have a lot of people who don't know the game. And it's almost really important that the grassroots are important. Speak to us about the grassroots and where you were then and what you learned then and learned since that would help in getting immigrants to be appreciative of this game.
Yeah, well, I'll speak to my own experience first. I mentioned my parents were immigrants and they didn't know much about the sport. My mom was actually a seamstress. She was a trained seamstress in Holland. And a lot of people might not know this, but she actually made some of our equipment. I mean, we weren't a rich family. So my mom made some of our equipment. I remember my kidney pads she made from, the Fabricland store that used to be there. I got hand-me-downs from my older brothers. That was just what you did back then. I mean, money wasn't a plenty, and my parents wanted to make sure that all of us got involved in sports. And having 5 kids and running around, and my dad having to work, and my dad was actually a janitor growing up, so he would work after hours because he would clean business offices and things like that. So they had to close at 5, and then my dad would come in, and actually we would help him out a lot with that business when we were of age. And so that was my experience growing up, and I can imagine a lot of immigrants have similar challenges, if you will, to gaining access to sports, and that's a real shame. I mean, I know Canadian Tire has that play early kind of program where you can get some money from them and there's some funding, but to be honest, it just seems sports is getting too expensive, really.
Absolutely. At the grassroots.
It's tough. So a lot of these lacrosse programs, they'll give a free stick, to start out. Or I think Mimico this year, I heard on Twitter, is giving out, the first year is free for the kids. And those kinds of things, if we can encourage those kinds of things, the people who have, and I'm one of those now, should give back to those that haven't. That's my philosophy, especially if you want to get them involved in sport. And to be honest, I don't care what sport. I always said that to my kids too. You just got to play, because there's just so much value in sport. Like the amount that you learn just in challenges that you face, it's almost like a microcosm of life. And that's the way I like to see it. And I think sports did me very well. I've gone very far with it. I'm happy about that. But I also want to encourage my kids to do that, and also new immigrants any way I can.
Relationship building, feeling like you belong, getting involved and understanding people, not because you don't know anything about them or are willing to learn something about them, where you can just naturally interrelate with people and develop an understanding of, as you said, life's differences, right? If we remain at home and sit in our room, we don't get to know the people that are out there. And if the only view we have is the ones that we're told about, we really don't advance. So I agree with you. I mean, that's some of the stuff I got from your answer. So thank you for that. So Gary, we got Jim Veltman. The guy was the captain, the leader of the Toronto Rock. And he did play for Brampton. I want to mention that too, because I don't want to leave them out.
With that. Actually, you
Go ahead.
You went all the way through the Brampton program. Let's talk about that program, because you were in the heyday years. Because when you went to senior, you went with the 3-man cups there. But let's talk about the whole program going up and getting you ready for the majors.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I played all my minor, and Brampton was a great center back then. We had A teams. I was fortunate enough to have some great coaches when I was a kid. I still remember their names. Great influence on my life. They brought in some really good players, actually hockey players. So I play with these kids in hockey too.
Mhm.
They were good athletes. Some of them dropped off, which is always surprising to see. Like some of our best players didn't continue, like say into junior or maybe halfway through junior, and then life got busy for them or something happened or they got in some sort of trouble or whatever. But for me, I just went right through, played 5 years of junior A, not successfully. We weren't very successful. We would make playoffs. We get put out by the Whitby Warriors, were the powerhouses of the time.
Mhm.
They had Joe Newendike, Gary Roberts, names like that on their team.
Right.
They were very good. So we didn't even get a sniffing chance at a championship. And then my first year of senior, actually, I was recruited to go out west. I played with the Coquitlam Adanacs for 2 years. We made the Man Cup the first year. We lost to Brooklyn. They're a very strong team. And then I came back in, my dad actually had a heart attack in 91, and I decided to come back. My plan was to go out west again for a third season. He had a heart attack in February, so I decided to stay back that summer, played with Brampton. We weren't very good that year. And then I went back out west for one more year. And then the 92 season happened, and that's when everything turned for me. That's when I started learning. Actually, I started learning how to be a champion with the Coquitlam Adanacs, going on that Man Cup run that we did.
Right.
I learned a lot about what it takes because I didn't really learn that in junior. I didn't really get that opportunity. So then with Brampton, with the players that we had the Kilgores, we had Cordingley, we had Tavares, we had the Coyle brothers, we had the Veltman brothers, believe it or not, my younger brother played too. We were a good team, and we were good for 2 years. And then the big exodus happened where everybody jumped ship and went to the Six Nations. I chose not to. I chose to stay in Brampton. Call me loyal, call me stupid, call me whatever you want, it doesn't matter. But just for me, where I was in my life, it just didn't work out. But those players actually went on to win, I think, 3 more with that Six Nation Chief team, which took our coach as well, Les Wakeling at the time, for 3 years. So good on them. But I won the 2 with Brampton, 92, 93, 98, one with Brampton again. And then 2003, I went out west more as a kind of see you later, senior A kind of, playing 1 year in Victoria, and we won that year as well. So I got the 4-mans as well.
So you got a lot of chance to learn about winning, because again, that's a learned thing too, how to be a winner. And the Buffalo Bandits come calling in the MILL. And we've had Darius Kilgore on. We've had a bunch of them on, all talking about the Wild West of lacrosse. Let's talk about that, because that Buffalo Bandits team back then was incredible. In the first, 5-10 minutes of a game, basically it would be decided. It would be that much of a rampage. That it was a lot of fun being in the stands because it was always a party in there. So let's talk about it.
I'm going to test your knowledge a bit because I don't know if you remember, but we had 2 exhibition games. We lost both of those. We had our first 3 season games. We lost 3. So it didn't look good. And remember, those were only 8-game seasons at that time. So we were 0-3, and then all of a sudden we won the next 5, and we turned it around. We became a team. Like you said, you learn how to win. You were right. That team was very stacked. But again, you're bringing in pieces that aren't used to each other. We had Derek Keenan. We had, top players from other summer programs were all in Buffalo at the same time. We had to learn how to play together. But once we did, like you said, Gary, it's games were over in 5 or 10 minutes. Like, I think we frustrated teams because they would dominate the game for, say, 45 minutes. We'd play for 15 and win by 10. Like, we were that talented. So being on another team, I can see the frustration. Being on our team, it was a lot of fun.
But more importantly, this was your first time to work with Les Bardley. And
Les is obviously a great mentor of mine, great friend who passed away. But that's when I discovered Les Bartley, because actually before that, I had no idea who this guy was. I had heard he played Senior B lacrosse. He was friends with John Meridian, who was the general manager of the time. Actually, our head coach was Buff McCready, and he got let go after those first 3 games. And Les Bartley took over. And I don't know if you remember, Gary, but we went on a 24-game winning streak after that.
I do remember.
And that spanned over 3 seasons. So after we lost those first 3, the 24-game winning streak started. And because the seasons were so short, we won the 92 championship, 93 championship, and just about the 94 championship.
You also introduced a rookie that we still know a little bit about, John Tavares. He joined in 92 also, and that was an extra piece to this, and a foray that we all still marvel at.
Yeah, I do too. He was amazing. Actually, my first experience with John Tavares was with when I played in Brampton Junior A. When we got put out by Whitby, they actually started a new playoff for the bottom 4 teams, and those teams that got put out in the first round. So like another quarterfinal and sort of like a B championship, if you will. Mm-hmm. And he was called up. I think he was a midget at the time, and he was called up to a Hamilton team. And I remember playing him in Junior A. And this kid, he was like, I would say he was probably at the time maybe 5'4", maybe $130 pounds. And this kid was scoring goals left and right, and I was just shaking my head, and everybody was chasing him around and trying to figure out how he did it. And that was my first introduction. And then, of course, the trade that nobody really knows about from Detroit to Buffalo, where we picked up John Tavares. I think we traded Brian Nicola to Detroit. Wow. And we had John Tavares, and it was amazing what kind of things he could do, and just our chemistry together. I really enjoyed John alive. He kind of thought the game the way I did, and I could do things like off the draw, I could pick it up and throw it over my head backwards, and because I knew he knew that I was going to do that, and then he would, in full stride, pick it up on a breakaway and score, and that was just kind of the chemistry that we had. It was a lot of fun.
How important is it to run in your career that you ran into players like that?
Well, very important, because I think if you stop growing, you stop being a person, to be honest. And I think we all have things to learn. If anyone ever says they know, lacrosse and, I got all the answers, they're lying. It's not true. I mean, I've played this game a long time. I've been in the game a long time, and I'm still learning. And I always will, and I hope I always will. And so playing with those guys, Frank, is so important because you watch them, and I was always a student of the game. I would watch what other people do and then try it myself in practices and those kinds of things, just to see the game a little bit differently. And it's the little nuances of the game where, maybe the average fan might not realize that you pick up as a professional player that increase, your value to the team. And for me, it wasn't just about playing offense. It was about playing defense as well, playing man down, playing power play, playing, special teams and face-offs and things like that. To me, that really intrigued me to be that all-around player.
Yeah, I don't want to hijack the direction that we're going here. I just wanted to toss that in because you're a general manager now, and a lot of what you've done before is in the memory bank, right? And you can see from seeing what it's like to be a winner that as a GM you have that recollection and these experiences that Gary is pointing out is something that we all need to do in life is take a look at the good that life has to offer and then move forward. So keep moving forward with Gary right now.
Well, one of the things I want to get to, just kind of jumping out of sequence where we are, is history is almost repeating itself because you drafted a young fellow by the name of Jeff Teat. And again, when I saw him in Brampton in juniors, you're talking about a small kid who's running around, everybody's chasing him, who could do absolutely anything, who can fire from anywhere, score from anywhere, set up plays. We have another Tavares in the making, kind of. And you've been able to put him in a situation now with who you've put on the team with guys like Callum Crawford, Kieran McArdle, Connor Kiernan, Dan Lomas when he gets back from his injury, to kind of help mold him and grow him as that professional. So you're using your past as well and your experiences, I think.
Yeah, that's a good observation, actually. The biggest compliment that I got, and I think Jeff got, was after last game. We just finished playing Buffalo, and I went over to their coach's room, and I just wanted to make sure everything was okay, like they got their after pizza and all that kind of stuff. And John Tavares was sitting there, and he said to me, he says, that Jeff T kid, he says he's a special player. And that coming from the kind of player that John was is probably the greatest compliment that anybody could ever get. Because John Tavares, he doesn't say things lightly. Like, I know John well enough that he doesn't just say that about anybody and everybody and just to be nice and all those kinds of things. He really he's very thoughtful in what he says. He doesn't say a lot all the time, but when he does say something, he's very thoughtful. So that was a great compliment. And those pieces that we've surrounded Jeff with, I'd like to say they were by design, but honestly, they're not always. I mean, we have obviously our vision of what, an offense looks like, about what a right side looks like, what a left side looks like, what a number one righty looks like, what a number two, righty looks like. Like, you need those pieces. Yeah, that's the philosophy piece that we have as coaches and GM about how we want to be on an offense. You can't have all the same kind of player. That's my philosophy. You need guys who can get other guys open, who don't need the ball that much, some guys who do need the ball that much, like all those kinds of pieces you need. So that's what we're trying to do. And the difficulty in this league is nobody's giving you their best players. That's the way it works.
Really?
Yeah. So you're trying to find these like little, I'm not going to call them diamond in the rough because other people know them from the past or whatever, but you're just trying to find that little piece within your philosophy of what offense should look like. And then you're hoping it's going to work out, and you try to build belief and confidence in that player that he is capable. You can do it. I'm a big believer in that, because what I see is the talent that these kids are coming up into the pros with is off the charts. That hasn't changed. And what I'm more intrigued by is, okay, well, what separates the really good teams from the not so good teams? It must be the mental side of the game. It really must. Like, all these guys know how to, throw these backhands and around the worlds and through the legs and can pass in, little spaces that you and I can't. And they got all the talent and all the skills. So what separates the good players from the not so good players for now? And for me, it's that mental side of things.
Yeah, when you talk about that, the other thing that I guess as a general manager from that perspective, experience is really important for you and for the coach and for the people that run the team, because you pointed out where you can't get the player you need. So now what you got to do is you got to get two players that can fit two different needs.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm making any sense, but it's a very nuanced thing where you have to, every move you make affects the team as a whole, and somehow you got to try and figure out. It's almost like trying to put 5 fingers in a dike because water's coming out of everywhere. And sometimes you say, well, with this guy I can fill 3 holes, with this guy I can fill 4, and then this guy who doesn't seem to be as used right now, but when I get those 2 guys, that guy all of a sudden becomes important. Am I losing everybody? I apologize.
But I find it interesting here is that you've taken different players. You're talking about character. We had Dave Petramala on last week, and he was talking about culture and the culture of the team. And you're talking about more or less the character of a player and different characters to fit different roles. Like, I'll give an example. As you went out and you got Scott Dominey to increase that transition thing in there, and all of a sudden no opposition can be safe and just, sauntering over the bench, because before you know it, he's scored. You went out and you got Damon Edwards to also bolster up in that transition game. So all of these are different kinds of players, but character guys to fit along with it. You have an up-and-coming goalie in Steven Orleman, who once he gets his legs set, to me, is the next Christian Del Bianco. I think he's got that same kind of style and can be that much of a game changer. So the pieces seem to be in place here. And with a couple of bounces here and there, a team that's 1-5 could be 4-2 very easily.
Yeah, but this game has a way of humbling you, eh? This just when you think you turn the corner, then all of a sudden something else happens. And that's what I love about sports, actually. But you're right. I mean, you're trying to fit the pieces here and there. We like anybody, I think, that would take over a team, you kind of look at, okay, well, what did they have, right? Let's take a look at film. Let's see the proof. And once we see the proof, what do we need to improve? And we did see the transition game as a big piece that you need to score goals in. Like this game, it's not that easy to score 5-on-5. It might look easy, but it's not that easy.
Mhm.
And where the goals come from usually is special teams and transition goals. Those seem to make the difference in a game, because our statistics show that even strength goals for both teams is maybe your 1 or 2 goal difference. So where are these other goals coming from?
Mhm.
They have to come from somewhere. And for me, or us, I should say, is it comes from special teams, and it also comes from transition. So we had to improve that area. And Scott's been great for us, and so is Damon. Damon brings obviously that leadership piece too, which is important for us because we are young. We still are, but we need those older guys to show these young guys the way. What it means to be a pro. You really got to take care of yourself. You can't just get there. It's not about just getting there. It's about, okay, now that you're here, what are you going to do? What are you going to do for the team? What are you going to do for yourself? And let's move forward that way.
Now, of course, you had the nickname Scoop and almost 3,000 loose balls in your career. You go out and you get Jay Thornberry, who is a dynamite face-off guy, probably a 500 career man. Probably, I think in Buffalo, one in 2014, he was something crazy number like 650 in his face-offs. But also loose balls, he just became, I think, 5th in an all-time list with 1,642 loose balls. So there's another guy in your image that would relate well to you that you've picked up and put onto the team. So we're starting to see more and more of the Veltman kind of ideal come into the New York Riptide.
Yeah, but I also told Jay, I said, you know what? I don't count loose balls on a face-off. I'm sorry. That just doesn't – we can have that debate all day about whether a face-off should count as a loose ball. Personally, I don't think the ball's loose. The ball's stationary. So how do you call that a loose ball? But that I digress. So, no, I think – but Jay, we had this little argument actually after the game, after I congratulated him, okay? So I did congratulate him. And then I said, yeah, but I don't count some of those. And then he said, why not? And then I told him. And but anyway, so, I mean, what he brings to us is obviously the face-off piece. Mm-hmm. But you can't score without the ball. Like, it just doesn't work. I know it sounds simple, but how do you get it? And again, it's about just being hounds out there for that loose ball as much as possible and gaining that possession so that you do have that opportunity to score again. It's such an important piece of the game that I think a lot of people lose sight of. Mm-hmm. Typically, when you see a win, look at the loose ball count, and usually the team that out loose balls the other is the winner.
Right. Sometimes in building a team, I know, like Gary mentioned that you're, 1 in 5. How important and how to concentrate on the long-term benefit and not give in to the short-term benefit, because today in sports, coaches, general managers, what have you done for me lately? Yeah, that's a tough one, Frank. I mean, obviously, I trust the people above me that they have a belief in me and my philosophy of things. I have a belief in the coaches, and kind of trickles down that way. But you have to balance that, right? Like, again, they were 1 in 12 when we took over, and I've been saying all along, we can't be 1 in 12. Like, you just can't sell a franchise that way. Like, you can't sell tickets being 1 in 12. So far the losses have started, accumulating and piling up. And I mean, you can look at all the goods, and that's good. There are some good things out there. And we did lose, 3 in overtime, and they could have swayed the other way and all that. And so you do have to pull the positives, but you also always have to have your eye on, okay, what business are we in? We're in the ticket selling business. We don't have that big TV contract that other leagues can rely on. They don't need fans. Well, they do probably want fans, but I'm just saying that, they can still afford those $1 million contracts without fans. How does that work? Well, there's TV contracts. We don't have that. So how do we afford fans? Well, we got to get out there and get tickets sold. And how do you sell tickets? You got to win games. Like, people like to follow a winner. And that's proven with the Jays. Like, look at the Jays. When they're successful, they sell tickets. When they're not successful, they don't sell tickets. And that's the way it works in our business too. So you always have to have your eye on on both. And you're right, Frank, it is tough to sell that also to ownership and say, listen, we think we got the right pieces. We just need some time. And I think we do have that window and that time. I do trust in those people above me. But you never know in this business, right? And that's why we're in it, I think. I think
that little bit of risk in your job. Like I'm a teacher, I don't have the risk of losing my job. I think that risk of losing your job as a professional, I think that's good. I think that's healthy. I think that's what drives you to be better. Not that I don't think I'm a pretty good teacher, but I'm just saying that I think you need that drive to be better, and that's okay to have that kind of risk. It's part of your job.
Well, that's mostly because when it comes to sports, there's that moment, that one moment of instant gratification where you get to hold something shiny and bright over your head and scream at the top of your lungs that you're a champion. That's an allure that is not, you can't get that anywhere else.
Yeah, I've told people, they say, what is like to win a championship? I said, it's hard to describe. It's like nothing else in life. I mean, I'm a father, and I was there at the birth of my kids, and that also was a moment in life that you'll never, ever forget. I'll never, ever forget the championships I won. It's just that elation. It's sometimes a bit of relief because it's finally over, that you actually did it. There's a bit of that. There's just that joy. You know, the hardest times for me has been when I've lost. But in losing, I've learned the most, I think. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I haven't learned as much winning as I had losing. So I'd also like to say that piece too, because I know there's people out there that say, well, yeah, it's easy for you to say because you won all those. Actually, a lot of my learning happened when I lost.
Yeah, a lot of our guests have pointed that out, so you're not alone. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, you have to look inside of yourself when you lose. It's easy to win, and everybody's elated, and everybody's jumping around, and to continue to win is also a character thing. It's one thing to win it once, but to win it again and again and again, and to know how to do it, that's the whole trick. I want to talk a little bit more about the loose ball thing, because you've said before in interviews that people think that it was a natural thing for you, but it wasn't. And it came to a whole lot of hard work. Describe a little bit about the effort that you put in to become the loose ball king of the NLL, really.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't. I think growing up, I was more of a goal scorer, so I was that guy. But then I noticed in junior, I think, is when I started to discover that piece about the game. Well, if we have the ball, the other team can't score. So that's the best defense ever. And I didn't like playing defense, so if I don't like playing defense, then don't lose the loose ball.
Right.
Once you gain the loose ball, you don't have to play defense. And that was a motivation for me.
Says the defenseman. Says the defenseman.
That's the guy who ended up being a defensive player. So, but no, that was a part of the game that I just really enjoyed, is trying to figure out how, because there's so many variables involved, right? Like how the ball is bouncing, what part of the boards, which part of the arena, how high, how low, is it a backspin? Is it a top spin on the ball? Like, where's that ball going to go? So I had a lot of fun kind of just tracking the ball, if you will. And I think that maybe is something like the advantage maybe I had over others, was that I kind of learned those kind of angles and top spins and those kinds of things. So I had like a step, not that, like, again, I'm not faster than another person. Some people think I'm longer because my arms are so long, but yeah, I guess I didn't have any other advantage really. So what is it? What was the difference? So I think it had to do with that. I really enjoyed understanding where the ball was going to be before it actually got there.
Yeah, learning is really important. When you talk about the reason why learning while you're losing is important, it's easy to learn when you win. In other words, replicate what you did. It's harder to figure out what you did wrong. And the greatest athletes anywhere in any sport learn from losing, because it means they're still thinking about the game. No one's saying you can't lick your wounds. Everybody is entitled to lick their wounds, but you just can't do it from the end of a season to the beginning of another.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, look at the Toronto Rock. We won the first 2 years I was there in Toronto. And then the year we lost, we could have been, a three-peat, is probably the year we should have won more than any other year.
Yeah, we've had a few things on telling us that too.
Philadelphia, I don't know if you remember, Gary, but they were ranked 4th in the league, and we ended up playing them in the final, and we were ranked 1st at home. We should have beat them.
We had Mark Millen, we've had Dallas Elliott, we've had a bunch of them on.
I remember the post game
being their favorite championship because They were so far underdogs. Nobody
Mhm.
gave them a chance in hell. And here they came and pulled this off in Toronto, in the loudest building they'd been in, because back then it was packed. So yeah, all those factors were there.
Well, and back to your point, Frank, about, learning, right? So what did I learn from that? I learned I didn't want to lose again to a team that below us.
Right.
Not saying Philadelphia, they became good as well, but we won 2 years later, like for another 2 years.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
It's that learning piece again. We figured it out.
Learn to respect your opponent is the
Mhm.
biggest thing I've heard from athletes when they lose when they shouldn't have. The first thing that happens is you don't respect the opponent that you're up against. And that's something that, remember, we talked about learning things about life? That's one of the biggest ones in life, taking people for granted.
Well, and I've coached many, my kid all the way up. And, there's always this mentality that the other team is the enemy. And I never understood it. Like, why are they the enemy? Like, if you respect your opponent to the point where you actually have genuine respect for them, you'll play better. You don't have to think of them as an enemy or any lower than you, or these guys are crap. We can beat them. We should, wipe them off the face of the earth. All that kind of talk to me was just, what are you trying to convince yourself of?
Right.
You're not convinced.
That's not about the game. It's about being personal, and personal
Yeah,
gets you in trouble in sports.
And I've always said in groups that I've been in and on teams, like, we shouldn't view them as the enemy. We should view them as the respected foe or opponent. And now that raises our game to play better.
Mm-hmm.
It's called focus.
Yeah.
Now you jump into coaching as soon as you retire. How did you get convinced that that's where you wanted to be on the bench, just to stay part of it, or because I know you want to stay part of the game? But
yeah, actually, I was hoping to do it longer with the Rock. I don't know if you remember, but I retired.
3 games or 4 games. Yeah, it was
I
a
joined
turnover kind of couple of years.
coaching staff. Yeah, that's right. And I lasted 3 games, I think it was. I think we were 1 and 2. I can't remember, but not long. So it was a little shorter than I anticipated. So then I went and I coached in the summer league. I thought, you know what, maybe I've got to earn my stripes too. I can't just jump out of, playing right into coaching. Maybe that's not fair. So I joined the Ajax Pickering Rock, and I coached with them. Now that was a tough go because they joined the major A or senior A. We were a senior B team, and then we went to senior A, and it was tough slugging because all these other teams had phenomenal players and were paying them. We weren't, and to convince somebody to play for us was pretty difficult, but they did at times. So, but again, like, from all that losing and all the teams like that didn't have all the advantages the other teams had, again, it made me learn. So I actually enjoyed those years because it made me figure out how to be a good coach. And I'm not saying that, I'm better than anybody else. I'm just saying that you have to learn how to be a coach, because what's difficult for, I think, really good players is not understanding that not everybody gets it all the time right away. Some people just need more work, more help.
Listen, Jim.
And I don't know that.
Yeah, so go ahead. Listen, Jim, you have another engagement, and we don't want to be the reason for you to be late. You have responsibilities. You promised to be here for half an hour. You've been here for 40 minutes. We really appreciate. If you feel you really need to go, please, we can say goodbye now and have you on again sometime where we can talk again.
Well, I really enjoy my conversation anytime we talk about lacrosse. And what I like about your show is you don't just talk about the game, you talk about the mental part of the game. And I really enjoy that. And you guys really promote, what has the game done for you? What's the sport done for you? And the sport's done a ton for me. I consider it the medicine game, the creator's game. I have a lot of respect for that part of the game itself. And it's got such a rich history. I think we should celebrate that. And that's what I think your show tries to do. It just doesn't get into the numbers and, hey, that's so-and-so and that's great. You guys try to understand what's going on inside people's minds. And I think that's so important. So thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's what I try to do with all the shows that we have, and I have a partner in lacrosse who feels the same way. So I'm very fortunate that way. Gary's great at understanding the motivation that I have, and I understand his love of the game. And between all of us, if we can figure out a way to help people appreciate what you've done and understand why you've done it, because in lacrosse, the story of lacrosse does not begin and end with youth. It goes right into, we've had guys on here who talk about lacrosse with us, Gary, right? That are approaching 90. So
Wow.
so it never ends, and we applaud you and many like you, and I wasn't kidding when I said I was very proud of the fact that you were on here, because you were big in lacrosse when lacrosse was big in Toronto, when it had its biggest impact, and you deserve a lot of that credit. Not you alone, of course. Everybody, Jamie, everybody that was involved with the Rock, everybody that was involved in the NLL. The popularity of the game at that time, if you stepped into an arena, there's still arenas now that you step into and you get that height of excitement. As a friend of ours who loves lacrosse, Jared Harris, taught me, he said, you pay for the whole seat, but don't think you're going to use it, because you might end up only on the edge.
You only need the edge. That's right.
Yes.
But I think that's what lacrosse is all about. And I go back to the 80s. So I've had guys who were kids playing lacrosse who became very famous lacrosse players come on this show and make fun of the fact that they try to hit me with a lacrosse ball. So yeah, I guess I feel loved.
Well, I think you know him because you were his commissioner. That's Paul St. John.
Yes.
That little CLAX, which I wish was still around. But ALL, just quickly before you go, the ALL as a developmental thing, now that it's completely west and east, your thoughts?
Well, I hope we become affiliated to the point where we can draft players and they have somewhere to go. That's the one frustrating thing that I've learned as a GM, is that I draft these kids. It's a great night. I'm happy for them. And then, after training camp, I have to release them, let them go, and make that phone call. And I just feel so bad all the time, because they work so hard to get there. And then my responsibility is almost over, and that doesn't really make sense to me. I drafted that player for a reason, and I'd like to see that reason through. I made a commitment, but I feel like I've broken the commitment as soon as I've released that player and they're free to go wherever they want, as opposed to, hey, why don't you go play in the all? This is our team. We can have coaches maybe that coach like us, like just all the advantage that a minor league system has. I hope we get to that point. I like what Paul's doing. I'm a good friend of his. I think it's great what he's done with it. But I hope it grows, and I hope the NLL and the all eventually come to some kind of agreement where it's a farm system for us.
That'd be great. The ecosystem matters, and I think you alluded to it, right? It's about the ecosystem for lacrosse. It's about getting in and being able to progress at whatever speed or level that you can. And also, geez, I don't want to drag you into more. You got to go. There's the officiating thing that goes from bottom to top that helps keep players playing as well, right? So I feel guilty here. There's so much we can talk about anyway.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And one last point I want to make is, like, I find that these players are maturing at different times. So yeah, you got a Jeff Teed who can step in and do what he does immediately, immediate impact. But what about that junior B kid that maybe is a late bloomer, right? And just takes some time. Where does he get that time? And with who? I'm not sure. So that's why I hope there can be some sort of partnership in the future. Maybe it'll get there.
Thank you.
Well, all I can say is best of luck. Best of luck with the Riptide. Best of luck tonight with your practice and with the rest of the season. I think you guys are on the right track, honestly. I think we touched on it, but I think all your pieces are pretty much in place once you guys get used to playing with each other, get your footing. I would say the second half of the season that this is a town when you walk into is going to be feared by a lot of teams walking in. It's not going to be just tick it off on your schedule.
I appreciate that, fellas. And, Frank, man, I got to work on that mental game of our players, right? They got to start believing in themselves and
absolutely
coming together as a team. And we're working on that part.
Well, the biggest hurdle to get over to success is actually visualizing it. That's the biggest
Right.
mental hurdle that you have to go over, is imagine that you can do it.
Man, that's a whole other topic, but I digress. I gotta go.
Take care.
We could talk for another like 2-3 hours on these kind of topics. I love these topics.
I don't know who tied you on the chair and made sure that we could keep you here a little longer. Whoever you are, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yes.
All right. Thanks, fellas.
Our pleasure.
Take care.
All right. Bye now.
Okay, that's Jim Veltman, former captain of the Toronto Rock, a champion. This guy, we've been talking about in sports. We talk about Tom Brady being the big winner, the guy that's won so many championships. In fact, maybe even more than any other team has won. Mm-hmm. This is a man that comes close to that image.
Well, yeah. Well, you take a look. 3 with Buffalo, 5 with Toronto, 3 with Brampton. 1 with Victoria. We keep going and going and going. And remember that, like he had mentioned, in his junior years, he had to learn by losing how to win, because they didn't win. You hear about guys winning Minto championships from the junior A's and stuff. They didn't win anything in Brampton in the juniors, because Whitby was the powerhouse. And you're talking about guys like Gary Roberts and Joe Nieuwendyk in that era, which were absolutely incredible. And to come up through that and into major series and become a winner, that's something else. And then to be able, I guess, as a vocation, being a teacher, being able to portray that made him such a leader in the dressing room. The guys wanted to play with him, for him, and having, we touched on it a bit, having Les Bartley as a coach, because Les was an absolute genius of being able to take everybody and listen to them and almost make you believe, is this, when he comes up with the way he's going to play it, make you believe that that's the way you had put it to him. But he was able to take a lot of big egos and work together and make these into winning teams. He did it in Buffalo. He did it in Toronto up until when he died. And, he will always be a staple of the Toronto Rock history and the Buffalo Bandits history.
And a teacher. To Jim Veltman, who spent a lot of time working for him. And I don't think there was a coach that worked on the mental side of the game more than
No, I agree. It was, it's one thing to have the systems, but also to be able to mentally, just be a comrade to your team, that they're comfortable in coming to you. They're comfortable in talking with you, and they will also listen to you, because at the end of the day, it's what you say and how they're going to play. And he was willing to stand behind his decisions on what he's going to do after, corroborating with the team.
I think it also helped, Gary, there's no underestimating the benefit of fans and their supportive nature and how they support the team. Believing you can win is important, as we know, we've mentioned it. Understanding the game and having a talent, very important. It matters. And like I said, believing you could win, and then having people waiting for you in a bar to congratulate you and remind you how wonderful a player you are. It helps enhance the feeling of that game being fun. This is the one thing I think we didn't get Jim to say, so I'll say it on his behalf. And Jim, you can send a message to me and tell me to shut up and that I'm not telling the truth, but I know I'm telling the truth. The truth is, if the game isn't fun, what is it?
Mm-hmm.
And coach, we forget that even the professionals want to have fun doing what they're doing. And that fun creates the opportunity for you to be your best, because nothing's holding you back, because you're doing what you want to do the way you like to do it. Now, agreed, I think we can agree that some players maybe don't understand the unselfishness of wanting to have fun as a unit as opposed to as an individual. There is that hair to split.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. But and as a general rule, it was the team thing. Together, each achieves more. And if you can get your team to buy into that, then you've already got half the battle done, because these guys are going to work together, which is what the New York Riptide is doing now. They're learning to play together. And like I told Jim, I think the second half of the season, when they're all used to each other, because these were a lot of other pieces that he changed from that first team, from that 1-12 team. That wasn't his doing. And a lot of those pieces have changed, moved on. He's filled, he's done other things with. And as these guys get more and more comfortable, that game Sunday against Buffalo, I honestly think that they outplayed Buffalo. I think they could have easily won. A little bit of penalty trouble at the end, cost them a lead, and then they lost in overtime. But, that comes with, the growing pains and learning how to win and doing those last few things to make sure that that victory is there. They're getting it. They're getting it. They're a high-powered, explosive team, but they're also learning on the back end. They have a rookie goalie in there who has got great junior lineage. His brother also plays in the NLL. Kevin Orleman plays for the Fort Worth team. And, they're going to get it. And they're going to be a very, very tough team to beat. And down the stretch, take a look. They're going to probably make the playoffs at this stage.
Well, the best point you can make, Gary, is the fact that they lost 18-17. I mean, that definitely shows that they're not a team that, that was well behind. But let me real quick. We only got a couple of minutes left. They won. Buffalo won 18-17. I got here also San Diego. The Seals beat Calgary 13-10, which was no mean feat.
No, because Calgary was taking it to them, and it's a tale of two games. That first half was all Calgary. San Diego, who just got all their players back from COVID protocols and all the other things, and again they're just getting, shaking the rust off. But the second half, boom, they shut Calgary down entirely, put together a strong half, and came away with that victory.
And at Ball Arena, the Colorado Mammoth beat the Vancouver Warriors 9-4 in a defensive struggle.
Absolutely. The last time these two teams met, it was an absolutely high-powered explosion in which it was one of the greatest comebacks I'd ever watched, with Colorado coming back from, I believe, 9-1 and wound up winning 17-14 or something like that. And this one to be only giving up 4 goals in the game, kudos to Dylan Ward, and that's a spectacular game.
The Saskatchewan Rush, they dumped all over the newest team in the NLL, 16-7.
Saskatchewan has had trouble with consistency this year, and it's nice to see that they finally got everything aligned. I feel sorry for the Fort Worth team that they happened to take the brunt of it, but in the big picture of things, this is the Saskatchewan team that I know. This is the Saskatchewan team that I've traveled to watch, and they're here, and it's only going to make it a little bit more interesting in the West.
Albany beat Halifax 8-6 in another defensive struggle.
This was another really, really interesting game because Halifax, now, the Nova Scotia, they're worse than Ontario. They can't even play there. They're going to be playing in Hamilton. So they've been scrambling around and only playing a couple of games in a month. And, for them to try and get together this game, Albany's finally righted their ship. They had a rough start, losing 3. Now they've won a couple in a row, and it looks like the team that I thought they would be.
The Wings won a road game in Georgia 8-7.
Every game that these teams play is a 1-goal game, most of the time going into overtime, whether it's 12-11, 8-7. This is a rivalry of all kinds of proportions. I can't wait to see the next time they play.
The Toronto/Hamilton Rock win 12-8 over Rochester Nighthawks, one of their favorite opponents.
Well, this is the first time that I've seen Toronto put together 4 quarters of play, and it really looked good. They were playing every aspect of the game. They were dominating, and I don't think the score was indicative of how much Toronto really controlled everything. Rochester started out the season well. They have a few things to work on. Having Holden Cantoni, who is their leading scorer, out of the lineup, I think really hurt them.
Okay, Gary, we're out of time. We slid that in. Apologize to our production staff. We went a little bit over, but it was important that we get it all done. We didn't want to appear to be favorites of any team. Thanks, Gary.
My pleasure, Frank. It's always great to talk lacrosse. It's a pleasure doing the show with you always.
Okay, for Gary Groob and, of course, our guest, Jim Veltman, this has been, of course, Lacrosse Talk, NLL style. Thanks for joining us. The show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network for Lacrosse Talk, NLL style, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer. Please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Until next time.